Zubair's life had been a battle from the very beginning. When his father passed away, everything around him seemed to collapse. His mother's hope, his sister's laughter, and his own dream of education. He was only 14, too young to understand the full weight of responsibility, yet old enough to feel it pressing on his shoulders. School ended abruptly, replaced by the harsh rhythm of survival. The day he put down his books and picked up a cleaning rag was the day he unknowingly sealed a future he would later regret. He found work at a large, elegant hotel, the kind of place where chandeliers glittered like diamonds and guests arrived in luxury cars. At first, his duty was simple: wiping tables, collecting dirty plates, and running behind senior waiters who barked orders faster than he could obey. Years passed, and Zubair finally earned the title of a waiter. But the pride he expected never arrived. The only thing that grew with time was his exhaustion. Every morning he would iron his uniform, tie his apron, and remind himself that one day, perhaps, life might reward his patience. Yet even as he served steaming dishes to politicians, businessmen, and wealthy travelers, he couldn't ignore the sharp difference between his world and theirs. They would laugh loudly, pour drinks worth more than his monthly wage, and leave behind untouched food as if it meant nothing. Zubair would quietly collect those leftovers, sometimes saving them for his family's dinner. Each night, when he walked home with sore feet and a tired smile, his thoughts always drifted toward what could have been. If only his father had lived a little longer. If only education had not slipped from his hands. At home, his mother's eyes spoke of constant worry. His two sisters taught neighborhood children to read, earning barely enough to cover basic needs. Lately, their mother had begun pressing Zubair to start saving for their marriages, her tone filled with both love and urgency. She wanted her daughters settled, and he understood that wish, but how could he save when his entire life was spent surviving? Every day he worked harder, and every evening he felt smaller. He realized that time had moved forward, but he hadn't. The 14-year-old boy who once wiped tables still lived within the 22-year-old man serving guests today. It was the same hotel, the same uniform, and the same invisible place in the world, as if destiny had forgotten to upgrade his life. It was an ordinary afternoon at the hotel when Zubair's routine quietly shifted toward destiny. The lunch crowd was as usual, the clatter of cutlery, the faint scent of expensive perfumes, and the dull echo of conversations in English that rarely included him. Yet amid the familiar noise, his attention caught something, or rather, someone. She entered gracefully, a woman around 35, with confidence radiating from her every movement. Her golden hair rested neatly on her shoulders, and her eyes shimmered with quiet power. The outfit she wore spoke of wealth: a designer dress, a shining bracelet, and a branded purse that probably cost more than Zubair's yearly salary. He tried not to stare, but it was impossible to ignore her presence. There was something magnetic about her, not just beauty, but authority. She looked around the hall like a queen inspecting her court, and every waiter straightened up, hoping to serve her table. Fate, however, didn't assign her to Zubair that day. Her table fell under the responsibility of his colleague, Shamsad, while Zubair continued serving the other guests. Still, his eyes kept drifting toward her. It wasn't attraction exactly. It was curiosity mixed with something deeper, something he couldn't explain. Days passed, and she kept coming back. Always the same table, always the same quiet poise. Zubair began to notice little things. She never came with anyone. She always carried a notebook she rarely opened, and she spent long moments simply observing people. He had seen hundreds of rich customers, but none like her. Then, one afternoon, destiny gave him the chance he didn't know he was waiting for. Shamsad, while carrying a tray full of drinks, slipped, spilling everything onto the floor near her table. The loud crash turned heads across the hall. Shamsad panicked, whispering curses under his breath. The manager's anger was certain, and Zubair, standing nearby, rushed to help. "Take her order," Shamsad said quickly, trembling as he began cleaning the mess. Zubair hesitated but walked toward her. She looked up, her gaze steady and sharp, then spoke softly, "I'll order in a while." Her voice was calm yet commanding. Zubair nodded respectfully, grateful she wasn't angry. He returned to his corner, his heart strangely unsettled. He didn't know then that this small moment, a tray falling, a brief glance, a simple exchange, was the beginning of everything. The woman he served that day would soon draw him into a world far removed from the life of a waiter, a world that shimmered with temptation, mystery, and irreversible change. The next afternoon unfolded with an unexpected twist. The same woman arrived again, her perfume preceding her presence, leaving a faint trail of luxury in the air. Everyone at the hotel noticed her by now, but she remained distant, speaking little and smiling even less. When Zubair saw her enter, something inside him stirred, not excitement, but an uneasy curiosity. He had no reason to expect another encounter, yet fate had already decided otherwise. Zubair was polishing glasses behind the counter when Shamsad hurried toward him, his expression tense. "She's asking for you," he whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "The lady from yesterday. She said she'll only give her order to you." Zubair froze, unsure how to respond. "Only me?" he repeated. Shamsad nodded helplessly. "She refuses anyone else." It was a strange demand. In their world, guests rarely cared which waiter served them. The food, the service, and the ambiance mattered. Not the person carrying the tray, but rules had no meaning when money spoke. Carrying his order pad, Zubair approached her table with quiet caution. She sat there like a portrait of composure, her manicured fingers tracing the edge of a wineglass. When she looked up, her eyes held a faint amusement. "So," she said, "you're finally here?" Zubair bowed slightly, trying to hide his discomfort. "Yes, ma'am." "What would you like to order?" "Chinese," she replied, then paused. "But serve it yourself." "I'll wait." Her tone carried a hint of mischief, as if testing him. Zubair nodded, wrote down the order, and went to the kitchen where Shamsad stood fuming. "She said only you can serve her," Zubair explained awkwardly. "Just let me do it." When the food was ready, he carried it carefully back to her table. As he placed each dish in front of her, she smiled faintly and said, "You serve well." "I like that." Then, without hesitation, she took a large note from her purse and slid it across the table. "This is for you. Don't share it with anyone." Zubair blinked in confusion. It was a 1,000-rupee note, far more than he had ever received as a tip. He hesitated, glancing at Shamsad from afar, but her gaze was firm. He quietly slipped the money into his pocket, murmured a thank you, and walked away. All through the evening, the thought refused to leave his mind. Why him? Why insist on his service? Why give such a tip for such a small act? He didn't know it yet, but this woman was beginning to rewrite the story of his life, one quiet command at a time. The following day began like any other, yet something in the air felt different. Zubair could sense it long before she entered. When the tall glass doors opened and the same elegant woman stepped inside, it was as though the rhythm of the hotel changed. Every waiter straightened their collars, but her eyes searched for only one person, him. She walked directly to a table that, by coincidence or fate, now belonged to Zubair's section. His heartbeat grew uneven as he approached. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, keeping his voice steady. She looked up with a faint smile that made him uneasy. "Today," she said softly, "I'll eat what you like." Zubair blinked, unsure if he heard her right. "Ma'am?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," she replied, closing the menu and sliding it toward him. "Tell me what you would eat if you were a guest here." He froze for a moment. This was unusual, this was even absurd. Guests never asked waiters for suggestions, let alone personal preferences. After a brief pause, he said humbly, "The hotel's Pakistani dishes are the best, ma'am." "I prefer them." Her lips curved into a knowing smile. "Then bring that." "I trust your choice." Hamdan. The name struck him like lightning. He hadn't told her his name. For years, he'd been nothing more than waiter or boy. To hear his real name, and from her mouth, felt both strange and powerful. You know my name? He asked. She laughed softly. You wear it on your badge. I just like how it sounds. Embarrassed, he nodded and left for the kitchen, his thoughts spiraling. But when he returned with the meal, she looked up again and said, Sit down, Hamdan. Eat with me. The words froze him mid-step. Ma'am, that's not allowed, he whispered, terrified. The manager would... Before he could finish, she raised her hand. Don't worry about the manager. I'll handle him. And with that, she called across the hall, summoning the manager with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Within minutes, the man appeared, nervous and polite. Yes, ma'am. I want your waiter to keep me company during lunch, she said calmly. He won't leave this table until I'm done. The manager hesitated, but a single look from her silenced him. Of course, ma'am, he agreed. Zubair's world blurred. As he sat across from her, he realized his curiosity had just crossed into danger. What kind of woman had power like this? And why was she using it on him? Zubair sat stiffly on the chair opposite her, unsure where to look. The elegant woman smiled faintly, sensing his discomfort. Relax, Hamdan, she said in a calm tone. You look as if you've been called to judgment. Her confidence unsettled him. He lowered his eyes, whispering, It's just... I'm not supposed to do this, ma'am. It's against the rules. Rules? She echoed, amusement flickering in her eyes. Rules are for people who have nothing to lose. You, on the other hand, have everything to gain. Her words sank deep, though he didn't yet understand them. She leaned forward, her voice softening. I've been watching you for days. You work hard, you don't complain, and you carry sadness in your eyes. Tell me, Hamdan, when was the last time someone asked what you wanted? He hesitated. No one had ever asked him that. He didn't even know how to answer. I just want peace, he murmured, and enough money to get my sisters married. Her gaze softened slightly. A noble wish, she said. But peace doesn't come from poverty. You deserve more than this. Zubair looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. Why do you care? He asked quietly. You don't even know me. She smiled, but there was something unreadable behind that smile. Something between compassion and calculation. Sometimes, she said, help finds us when we stop expecting it. Think of me as that help. Before he could respond, she called the waiter standing nearby and asked for 2 plates. To his surprise, she served him herself, gently pushing the food toward him. Eat. I insist. His heart pounded as he picked up the spoon. The aroma of the freshly cooked meal made him realize he hadn't eaten since morning. Between bites, he watched her in silence, her graceful posture, the confident way she spoke, and the strange sadness that occasionally crossed her face when she thought he wasn't looking. When they finished, she paid the bill and placed another large note on the table. For you, she said. And remember, I can help you if you let me. Her voice carried a promise, one that both tempted and frightened him. As she left the hotel, her perfume lingered long after she was gone. Zubair sat there, staring at the money, torn between gratitude and suspicion. Something about her kindness didn't feel ordinary. He couldn't decide whether she was a savior sent by fate or a storm quietly drawing him in. That night, sleep refused to come. Zubair lay on his thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, hearing his mother's faint coughs from the next room and his sisters whispering softly as they marked exam papers for neighborhood children. Their small home felt even smaller under the weight of endless responsibilities. The money the woman had given him lay inside an old tin box near his pillow, gleaming faintly under the dim light. Bazang. Both a blessing and a question. He replayed her words again and again. You deserve more than this. They sounded comforting, but mysterious. What did she mean by help? What could a woman like her possibly want from a man like him? He tried convincing himself that perhaps she truly meant well. Maybe she wanted to offer him a better job or some kind of sponsorship. Yet, deep down, another voice whispered warnings. In his world, nothing came without a price. By morning, his thoughts were interrupted when his mother called him to sit beside her. She looked weary, yet a fragile smile curved her lips. "A good proposal came for your sister, Mina," she said softly. "The boy works in an office, and his family seems decent." Zubair's heart lifted, but only for a moment. Her next words were filled with worry. "They'll come next week to finalize the engagement. We must arrange everything respectfully. You'll find a way, won't you?" Her tone wasn't demanding. It was hopeful, trusting, full of faith that her son would somehow make it happen. Zubair nodded immediately. "I'll manage," he said, though inside he felt the ground slipping from under his feet. How could he manage? His salary barely covered rent and groceries. That evening, as he returned to the hotel, the woman's perfume greeted him before she did. She was already there, sitting at her usual table, elegant as ever. Her eyes met his, and a slow smile appeared, as if she already knew his turmoil. "You look tired, Hamdan," she said gently, "still carrying the world on your shoulders." He hesitated before replying, "It's my family. My sister's marriage went, we don't have enough." She leaned back, folding her arms thoughtfully. "Then maybe it's time you let me help." Zubair's pulse quickened. The words that had once sounded generous now felt heavy with possibility and danger. He stood there, torn between faith and fear. For the first time, he wondered if this woman was truly a door to opportunity, or a trap dressed in silk. The next day felt longer than usual. Zubair went through his duties at the hotel mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. Every clang of a plate, every echoing laugh from a customer only deepened his restlessness. He knew she would come again. Somehow, he also knew that this time she wouldn't leave things vague. When she finally entered the hotel that afternoon, dressed in a dark green outfit and carrying the same golden purse, his heart began to race. He approached her table quietly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Good afternoon, ma'am." Her lips curved into a calm, knowing smile. "So," she said, "you've made your decision, haven't you?" Zubair blinked. "Decision?" "You need help," she continued smoothly. "And I can help you. But every help has a price, not always in money, but in choice." Her tone wasn't threatening. It was almost motherly, though her eyes gleamed with something sharper. He hesitated before nodding slightly. "I'm ready to listen." She leaned forward. "Then listen carefully. If you want to change your life, you must first leave this place, quit this job." The words hit him like a slap. "Leave my job?" "Ma'am, this job feeds my family. I can't." She raised her hand gently, silencing him. "This job keeps you alive, yes, but it will never let you live. You'll keep serving others, collecting leftovers, and watching people waste what you can only dream of." "Is that the life you want?" Her voice grew softer, almost hypnotic. "I'm offering you something better. A way to stand on your own feet, to earn more in a week than you earn in months here." Zubair's throat went dry. "What would I have to do?" She paused for a long moment, then spoke deliberately. "For now, nothing complicated. All I ask is that you spend 3 hours with me every night. Here, in this hotel." Room 102. Zubair froze, unsure if he had heard her right. 3 hours? For what purpose? "You'll know when the time comes," she said smoothly. "I promise you won't be hurt, but I can't tell you everything yet. Some things must be experienced, not explained." He stared at her, his mind spinning. Everything about her words sounded wrong, yet her calm certainty made them strangely believable. She took a folded note from her purse, placed it gently before him, and said, "When you're ready, bring your courage, not your doubts." "I'll be waiting." That night, as he walked home under the flickering streetlights, the paper burned in his pocket like a silent invitation from fate, tempting, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. For 2 nights, Zubair couldn't find peace. The woman's words replayed in his head like an echo he couldn't silence. "Quit this job, 3 hours every night. I'll change your life." It all sounded like madness. Yet, strangely, it also sounded like a door opening when every other had been closed. Each time he tried to ignore the thought, his mother's worried face appeared before him, followed by Mina's laughter and the reminder that her wedding was fast approaching. The little money he earned as a waiter would never be enough. On the third evening, his mother called him as he entered the house. "Your sister's future in-laws came again," she said. "They fixed the wedding date." "We don't have much time." Her voice trembled slightly, but she smiled as if trying to hide her fear. "You'll find a way, won't you?" Zubair nodded slowly. "I will," he whispered, though his chest felt heavy. That night, as his sisters laughed in the kitchen, he sat alone outside staring at the sky. The stars looked calm, but his thoughts were in turmoil. For the first time, desperation outweighed doubt. He had spent years obeying rules that kept him poor. Perhaps breaking one was the only way forward. The next day, he went to the hotel with a decision already forming in his heart. When she arrived, he approached her table before she could even call him. "I've decided," he said firmly. Her smile was slow but victorious. "Good," she replied. "Come tonight. Room 102, 11 o'clock. Don't tell anyone. Leave your uniform behind." Her tone was so composed, so certain, that it left no space for argument. That night, after his shift ended, Zubair wrote a short resignation letter. His hands trembled as he handed it to the manager, who stared at him in disbelief. "You're quitting?" the manager asked. "Zubair, you're one of our best boys. You have no other job lined up." "Think carefully," Zubair forced a smile. "I just need to try something new, sir. If it doesn't work out, I'll come back." The manager sighed and patted his shoulder. "You're a good man. Remember, this door will always be open." Those words felt oddly comforting as Zubair walked down the empty corridor, uniform folded in his hands. The hotel lights shimmered softly against the polished floors as he stopped outside room 102. For a moment, he stood frozen. Then, gathering all the courage he had, he knocked on the door, the handle turned, and her calm voice floated from inside. "Come in, Hamdan. Your new life begins tonight." The door creaked open slowly, releasing a wave of expensive perfume that filled the corridor. Zubair stepped inside, his heart pounding so loudly he could almost hear it. The room was softly lit, with golden lamps casting warm shadows on the polished floor. She sat on the bed, dressed elegantly as always, but there was something different about her tonight, something more serious, almost ceremonial. "Lock the door," she said calmly. Zubair hesitated, then obeyed. When the click of the lock echoed through the room, it felt like a final line being crossed. He stood silently, waiting for her to speak, his palms damp with sweat. She opened her purse and pulled out a thick bundle of cash, placing it gently on the side table. "This," she said, "is your payment for tonight." 3 hours. No questions, no fear. His throat went dry. Payment for what? Her lips curved into a knowing smile. "Sit down, and I'll tell you." He sat cautiously on the edge of a nearby chair, ready for anything, except what came next. She reached into her bag again, this time pulling out brushes, powders, and bottles. One by one, she arranged them neatly on the table. "Do you know who I am, Hamdan?" He shook his head. "I'm a makeup artist," she said proudly. "Not an ordinary one. One of the best in this country. I've trained all over the world. But to master my craft, I need faces. Unique ones." Her eyes lingered on him. "And when I saw you, I knew I'd found the perfect one." Zubair blinked, confused. "You want to do makeup on me?" "Exactly," she said almost joyfully. "Your skin tone, your bone structure, they're rare. I've worked on dozens of models, but never someone like you. You're not fair, yet your skin has depth, character. I can create something extraordinary on it." He stared at her in disbelief. "But I'm a man." How can I let you? She interrupted, laughing lightly. Oh, Hamdan, these are the walls you've built around yourself. The world is bigger than you think. Art has no gender. Her voice softened. Think of it this way. You'll sit here for 3 hours, do nothing, and earn more than you ever have. I'll make you famous. Both of us will win. Zubair's breath came unevenly. He wanted to refuse, but the money on the table shone like a promise of freedom. After a long silence, he nodded slowly. She smiled, lifting a brush toward his face. Good boy, she whispered. Let's begin. The soft touch of the brush against his skin marked the first stroke. Not just of makeup, but of destiny itself. The first touch of the brush felt strange against Zubair's skin, soft, deliberate, and almost hypnotic. The woman moved with the precision of an artist painting on a priceless canvas. The air smelled faintly of foundation and perfume. He sat motionless, his heart still racing, as she worked in silence. Her hands glided over his face with effortless control, tracing every curve, every line, as if sculpting something new from what already existed. Look straight, she murmured, her tone both gentle and commanding. Don't move. Zubair obeyed, staring blankly at the reflection in the mirror before him. With every passing minute, his familiar features began to blur beneath layers of color and contour. He could hardly recognize himself. The man who once served pan tea and wiped tables was disappearing, replaced by a version of himself he didn't know, elegant, striking, almost unreal. After nearly 3 hours, she stepped back and smiled. Perfect, she whispered, satisfaction glowing in her eyes. She picked up her phone, capturing pictures and short videos from different angles. The flash illuminated his transformed face, and for a brief second, he felt as though he'd stepped into another world, one of fame, art, and strange beauty. He turned toward her, his voice trembling. Will people see these? Of course, she replied confidently. Badasim. That's how you'll earn. I'll tag you, promote you. You'll become my muse. The proof that makeup can turn anyone into art. The thought frightened him, yet there was also an undeniable thrill. For years, no one had noticed him, not his struggle, not his effort. But now someone saw him. Someone called him special. And for a poor man who had lived invisible all his life, that single word was powerful enough to break every rule he'd ever known. Days turned into weeks. Each night, Zubair returned to room 102. Each session, she experimented with new styles, bolder colors, and dramatic expressions. The videos spread fast online. People praised her artistry, but they also noticed him. The world began to ask, who is the model with that mysterious face? Soon, modeling agencies reached out. Money flowed in. Zubair's sisters were married in celebration he could once only dream of. His mother smiled again, proud but confused by the sudden prosperity. Standing in front of the mirror one morning, Zubair studied his reflection, half artist's creation, half survivor of hardship. For the first time, he realized that sometimes destiny does not open the door you expect. It paints a new one in colors you never imagined. The boy who once served others had become the man everyone now admired. His story began in silence and ended in transformation.